Part 1. What's happening? Something shifted around you, quietly at first. You started noticing little things. A comment that didn't quite fit. A message from someone you hadn't heard from in a long time. A strange coolness from people who used to be warm. None of it was loud enough to point at. None of it could be called an attack, exactly. But the pattern was there, if you stood back far enough to see it. People were saying things, and the things had a shape, and the shape was you. You weren't being talked to. You were being talked about. And somewhere underneath all the noise, you could feel the outline of a single hand directing the orchestra, even though that hand was very careful, never to be seen holding the baton. There's a particular flavor to coordinated whispers, and you started to taste it. The messages weren't quite arguments. They were prods, little tests. Someone would say something just sharp enough to provoke a response, but vague enough that they could play innocent if you bit. The same phrases kept showing up in different mouths. The same accusations kept arriving from different directions. Like everyone had read the same pamphlet and was reciting from memory. You couldn't pin it to one person, because the whole point of the design was that no single person could be held responsible. The pressure came from everywhere and nowhere at once, which is exactly what makes this kind of thing so disorienting when you're inside it. You probably tried to figure out where it started. Most people do. You went back through your memory looking for the moment something turned, the conversation that got twisted in transit, the small thing that grew teeth. Maybe you reached out to someone in the middle of it, hoping that if you could just clear things up, the wave would settle. It didn't settle. Because the people carrying the message weren't actually the ones generating it. They were carriers, not authors. They were repeating something they'd been handed. And they were repeating it because doing so made them feel useful, included, on the right side of a story they hadn't bothered to verify. You weren't dealing with people. You were dealing with a version of yourself you'd never met, walking around in the world introducing itself to strangers, and then the thing happened that no one expected. You didn't react. You didn't post the long explanation. You didn't call the people who'd gone quiet. You didn't write the careful statement defending yourself. You just kept living. You did your work. You took care of the small things in your day. You let the noise be noise. Somewhere in your body, you understood that defending yourself would only feed whatever was hungry, and you decided not to feed it. The army arrived at your door. The army found no one waiting to fight. The army looked around, confused and slowly. Because nothing breaks a mob like the absence of a target, the army started to drift apart, wondering why they'd been so sure in the first place.
Part 2. Why it's happening. The person behind this needed something from you they couldn't ask for directly. They needed a reaction. A reaction would have proven they still mattered. Still had a wire running into your nervous system. Still had the power to make you feel small. A fight is a kind of intimacy. A defense is a gift. Even your anger would have been a form of attention, and attention was the currency they were trying to extract. The whispers weren't the goal. The whispers were a delivery system. The goal was to put enough pressure on you that you came back to the table, apologizing, explaining, negotiating for your own reputation. They wanted you bent. They didn't care whether the bending came from shame or rage. Either one would have counted as a win. When someone can't have a conflict directly, they outsource it. People who can confront you do. People who can't, because they're too image conscious, too uncertain of their own grievance, too afraid of what would happen in an honest conversation, recruit a chorus instead. The chorus does the work while the conductor keeps their hands clean. If anyone asks, the conductor can shrug and say they had nothing to do with it. It's a beautifully designed piece of cowardice, and the design holds up so well that the conductor often believes it themselves. They get the satisfaction of seeing you punished without ever having to be the one to punish you. They get the outcome of cruelty with none of the cost of being cruel. Underneath the whole performance is something much simpler than anyone wants to admit: shame. The person who built this is ashamed of something. Maybe how things ended. Maybe something they did that you saw. Maybe the gap between who they pretend to be and who you knew them to be. Shame is a heavy thing to hold, and most people can't hold it for long. So they look for somewhere to put it. The easiest place to put shame is on the person who witnessed it. If they can rewrite you as the bad one, the shame transfers. Their story gets cleaned up. Yours gets dirty. It isn't malice in any cinematic sense. It's just a person trying very hard not to feel something unbearable and using you as the place to set it down. The people who joined in are a different story, and they deserve to be understood on their own terms. Most of them didn't have strong feelings about you. Most of them barely knew you. They participated because participating felt like belonging. Joining a pile-on is one of the oldest forms of social safety humans have. You're not the one being looked at. You're one of the ones doing the looking. There's a small hit of righteousness in it, a reward for being on the correct side of a story you didn't bother to check. The conductor knew this. The conductor counted on it. People are far more recruitable than they like to believe, and the recruitment process is usually as simple as a tilted head and the words, "Did you hear what they did?" Your stillness broke the whole thing, because the whole thing was built to run on your reaction. Every campaign like this depends on the target's cooperation. The target is supposed to flail. The target is supposed to deny, defend, explain, plead, post, beg the audience for understanding. The flailing is what gives the story air. Without your participation, the story has nowhere to go. The carriers run out of material. The conductor runs out of momentum. The bystanders get uncomfortable and drift away. The whole machine needs you turning the crank, and you somehow set the crank down. That was the move. That was the move there was no answer for, because no one builds a plan for what happens when the target simply refuses to play.
Part 3. What it means. Notice what your silence revealed about them. A person who keeps pushing against someone who isn't pushing back is showing you their hand without realizing it. They're telling you the issue was never your behavior, it was their need. If the problem had really been about you, the moment you stopped responding would have been the moment things wound down. The fact that the pressure continued long after you'd gone quiet means the pressure was never aimed at resolution. It was aimed at feeding. And anything that has to feed on you to survive is something you were right to step away from. Your instinct to keep distance was correct. Your instinct to stay quiet was correct. Trust those instincts the next time they show up, because they were the only thing in the room that knew what it was doing. Something worth keeping is the version of you that didn't flinch. Most people, when surrounded, start performing their innocence. They explain, they justify, they bring out their evidence, they recruit their own side. By the end of it, they're just as covered in the mess as the people who threw it. You didn't do that. Some part of you understood you don't owe a defense to people who weren't owed an accusation in the first place. The audience for your explanation was a fake audience, primed to disbelieve you before you opened your mouth. Defending yourself to a jury that had already been paid off would have been a waste of breath. You kept your breath. You'll need it later for people who actually deserve to hear what you have to say. The people who stayed steady during all of it told you something important about themselves. Pressure reveals composition. Composition, the ones who treated you like a person while everyone else was treating you like a topic. Those are the ones who showed you who they are when there's a cost to standing near you. Keep them close. The ones who quietly slipped away, who got suddenly busy, who started moving in different directions, you don't have to make a scene about it. You don't have to confront them. You just have to notice. The information is free and it's honest, and you can use it the next time you're deciding who gets the real version of you and who only gets the polite one. There's one last thing, and it might be the strangest. At some point, not soon, maybe much later, the conductor will reach back out. It'll be soft, a small message, a casual greeting, something that pretends to be nothing. It'll come when the noise has died down and the audience has wandered off and they're alone again with whatever they were trying not to feel. They'll be checking to see if the door is still open. You don't have to slam it. You don't have to answer it either. You can just let it sit there, the way you let everything else sit there, and go on with your life. They sent the whole army. You didn't flinch. The war, as far as you're concerned, ended a long time ago. The only person still fighting it is the one who started it, and they're fighting it alone now, which, underneath everything, is what they were always most afraid of.